actually have a couple coming out stories, but I was born in a very small town in Ohio in 1949, 23,000 people. If I was outside playing as a little kid, I would be outside in the backyard and I would have boxes lined up with all of my puppets in boxes because they were in the hospital and I was taking care of them. And so that's a lot of what my life was like. Also, in my head, I was raised as a little girl of the 50s. That's how I was raising myself. And if you were a little girl in the 50s, you did whatever a man said and you took care of him. I was not into anything masculine, but part of being that different, quiet child was I was also, very early on, I was subject to a lot of sexual molestation by teenage boys, so that sort of made me hide more. And what that taught me was it was not safe to be male because males were cruel. The first time I was sexually molested by a man was when I was 13 years old. And then it sort of increased from there. I was also sexually abused in my home, but not by my parents. So because I was in the mindset of being male was a bad thing because they hurt you, they were not kind to you, my mindset was female. So most of my life growing up, I spent a lot of time with my mother, with women. My mother was severely hearing impaired, but she would never get a hearing aid because she was too proud. I mean, that was a day when deaf people were still referred to as deaf and dumb. So and so a lot of what I did was, I felt like I was taking care of her. I would say my prayers at night, and there would be like little smile marks on my hand because I prayed so hard to have a baby. And if there was a group of women and there was a baby, I was there. I was like, forget the ice cream truck. I was there. I mean, that was my passion. So I remember when I was in college, I'd gone away to college, and I remember sitting in my first apartment with gay roommates. We weren't gay then. We were homosexual. We were sissies. All the jargon, which also led me to be pretty much invisible. And being guys, they were talking about their sexual conquests. And I think I was 21 or 22, and they were talking about their sexual conquests, and I thought, well, you have been with very many people. And I spent about 2 or 3 days trying to remember who I had sex with. And the amazing thing to me was I remembered them all. It was a one-night stand. If it was 20 minutes, I remembered them all and was astounded after 3 days when I realized at the age of 22, I had been with over 85 men. And I thought, something's very wrong here. But again, it tells you how I define myself then. I've always been out. I don't ever see myself as not being out. My parents never discussed the fact that I was gay, but they knew. I mean, I would come home with partners, and my mother would be uncomfortable with it, but she'd have a ball with them. But she never, ever discussed it with me. Interestingly enough, as a gay man when I was 32, I'm 67 now. At 32, I adopted a baby he was 3 years old, but developmentally, they said he would never speak, he would never develop, and he would never read. And I looked at him and thought, you people are not listening to him. He'd been placed for adoption several times and returned. So that was many years ago. He's 37 today, and he reads, he writes, he works full time, and he lives almost by himself in Evanston. So he did it. But that was like, I used to say to myself, well, God says yes, no, or wait. Well, okay, I waited. I've been in 3 long-term relationships. My 2 previous partners, we ended our relationship because both of them wanted what was the classic gay open relationship, and that was not who I was, even if it meant losing the relationship. Sadly, both of those men died of AIDS, and several years later, each one of them called me and said, I'm dying. And I still love those men because a girl with the 50s, you love people forever. I'm in a relationship now with a man who is 30 years younger than I am. We met and thought, okay, this is never going to work. You were too young, you're too old. People will say I'm kept, you know, back and forth, and we argued and argued and argued. I've been with him, it will be 15 years now. And last year was my most difficult coming out because finally marriage equality, marriage was allowed. In fact, I'm so happy. Ryan and I did the first legal wedding in the state of Illinois, which is very cool. The women got the permission before because she was a major civil rights advocate and would die before the law went into effect. So I was so happy we could do that. So Ryan was never sure if he wanted to be married. And I thought, you know, maybe this is the right time to ask him. And we went to a nice restaurant. I was going to ask him. The entire meal was a disaster. And I thought, no, this is not it. So I finally asked him in our backyard, and he said yes. And so we started preparing for our small wedding. We were both florists, so we know all the jargon, and it wasn't going to be a large wedding. But as we prepared, there was something burning inside of me, this secret. And I thought, no one knows this secret. And I said to myself, you have to tell him. And you have to tell him. And I thought, but he could leave me if he knows my secret. Everything I have could end if I tell him my secret. Well, the tension mounts, and we're addressing invitations. And I said, I have to tell you something, because this may change your opinion. I said, you need to know, if I was 9 years old today, I would not be this physical male in front of you. My gender is female, and you need to know that and understand that before we go any farther. And he looked at me, and I thought, you know, my heart's going, oh, I felt like it was 10 minutes, you know. And he looked at me, and he goes, well, I guess that's the reason you like scarves and jewelry so much. And we proceeded to do our invitations. So that's been good. I also, I mean, it has freed me a lot. Will I go out tomorrow and do hormones? Will I go out tomorrow and change my body? I don't know that I will, because I have sort of mixed. One, I'm 67 years old. If I was 9 years old and started hormones, I would look a lot different. But then I also began to wonder if I would have a stronger voice as an advocate if it was this male body. I've certainly changed the way I dress. I've certainly changed my style a lot. But so, yeah, that was probably the hardest. But the other thing from that is when I was a kid, I could not read, I could not write, and it was terrifying. But, you know, I had post-traumatic, I was ADD, and as an adult later in life, I started to write. And so now, all of my writing is as a transgender woman, and that has been great. And I will, you know, I will continue to be an advocate because I think transgender children have literally been sent here to change the world. It's not just about their sex. I truly believe this is evolution, and I truly believe this is a point of having more ambiguous sex where it's not going to matter what your body looks like. It's, you know, I have a seagull that I rescued more than 6 months ago. Totally illegal, but no one else would take him, and I kept trying to find a place for him. He had a broken wing and a broken leg, but the law says you cannot touch a wild bird because they're protected, but if you take them into any kind of rehab center or a wildlife center, they're immediately killed. And I said, wait a minute, that makes no sense to me. So his bloody wing healed. When I met him, he was literally frozen on the snow. And he healed. Everyone said he won't eat. He healed. And one day he was looking in the mirror. And I thought, this is a great picture of him looking in the mirror, you know, with his twisted leg and all that. And I never allow myself to be photographed because the image is never what I perceive. And I was taking a picture of him, and I was in the mirror, and I stepped out, and he sort of said to me, "It's time you stepped into the light." And he said to me, "Look into the mirror. What do you see?" He said, "You may see a seagull," but he goes, "Look further." He goes, "I'm a seagull. I have a broken wing. I have one leg. I will never fly. I hop. I'm still a seagull." So when you look further, he said, think of a woman who's been ravished by cancer. She has no breasts. She has no female organs. She's still a woman. That's what she is. And he said, look at yourself. You look in the mirror. You see a man, but you are not. Your gender is female, and you can still be a woman. So it was having that experience with him, and whatever messages he came to send me was probably the most eye-opening thing that I've ever had. And interestingly enough, he died shortly after he was in the rehab facility. And they said to me, we've done 16,000 animals and we have never cried before because he taught compassion. He reminded us there of compassion. And I thought, you know, that's really what we need dealing with transgender, with all these issues. We simply need compassion. And so I decided, because this little seagull affected so many people, teaching them compassion, and that he could never fly, that I decided that he should see the world. So I found an artist in Wales who makes their little brooches. And he's now being flown literally all around the world. And wherever there needs to be compassion, he's there. I mean, he's been in the Berlin Wall. He went to the pipeline. He's been all over the world, which is really great. But I guess, I don't know where I'm going with this, except that coming out, people will be compassionate to you. And you have to understand that when you come out, you're telling people so much about the world and what the future of the world is going to be like. When I came out, you know, the gay life was dark bars. That's what it was. We don't need to be hiding anymore. And yes, it's high risk, there's violence, and we still have to stand up for our values. This is exactly the time to push the boundaries. Exactly the time. For those people who will come out, we need to say, we're not hiding in the closets anymore. I mean, trans kids are being murdered, are committing suicide, and our greatest challenge is to keep talking and keep educating and not being afraid to stand up for what we believe in and pulling people in that need the help. My husband and I just closed our business. But there's something going on I see already where we have never had so many people say, do you want to meet for coffee? Let's go out for dinner. And I think that's going to happen more right now. I think people are going to come together, talk more, face-to-face, forget Facebook. I think that's the way a lot of our country is going to be saved. It's going to be saved by the women marching. I mean, I truly believe women will change the politics in this country. And it's going to change with the woman in Kmart checking out, talking about Trump. It's that kind of grassroots that's going to change. Like I said, people are coming together in small groups. They're talking, they're sharing. That's what's going to change our country, and that's going to put gay rights forward. You know, and one of the reasons I wanted to I saw some of the videos that had been done, and I thought, as young people lose connection with older people. And I thought, it's important to hear other people's stories about even how bad it is now. It's not like what it was. And I think so much in our society, we lose the interaction with people and sitting down and talking. Stephen English, StephenEnglish. I'm a big advocate for against domestic violence, women's rights, the disabled, trafficked women, and I've been involved in lots of those kinds of programs. Even in the business I had, the retail business, we only carried fair trade merchandise because so much of it is made by women who've been rescued from trafficking.